Yeah, we're gonna be dealing with capitalism is evil, and with this information basically that I'm about to drop and establish, this is supposed to bring everything that we're dealing with in the Western world to a conclusion. It's not supposed to be open ended where we keep arguing and debating. I'm trying to bring it to a conclusion. These ideologies and concepts and constructs to a conclusion. So let's go ahead and get into it. But capitalism is evil. That's basically the topic. So the first word we're going to deal with, dealing with capitalism, is money. We got to deal with money. Now, if you didn't know, you know now. I'm going to break it down. The origins of the term money comes from the Latin and Greek word monea. And that word monea is the goddess by the name of Hera. Her name in the Roman pantheon is Juno. So you have Hera in the Greek and her husband named Zeus. We're gonna be dealing with Zeus thoroughly with this video, with this topic. So just plug in. We're gonna be dealing with Zeus and his wife Hera. Now Monea, she has the name Regina Monea or Juno Monea. Okay, so basically what you gotta understand about mythology when dealing with the Roman or the Greek or any mythology is that basically these deities and these gods represent principles in nature or principles in the psychology. That's all. It's really simple. So whatever you meditate on, whatever you pray on, whatever's in your mind and your thoughts from day to day, that's your worship. That's your devotion. The word deity, devotion, daylight, and the word theos, which means deity or God in the Greek language, in the Latin language. Theos, the word Zeus as well. All of these words mean D. D means thought. So whatever you're meditating on, dhyana, the word dhyana, meaning to meditate. Whatever you're thinking on is whatever you're worshiping. That's what you're going to manifest. That's what you're going to move toward. So what I'm saying is Monea is a deity, a thought form of worship, a goddess, right? A principle in nature and a principle in our mind. But her husband, Hera's husband or Juno Monea's husband is Zeus, and we're gonna be dealing with that because what we're dealing with today is gnosis or Gnosticism, which is basically the knowledge. Gnosis, the word knowledge comes from the word gnosis. So we're dealing with spiritual knowledge that's supposed to awaken you to the Christ within, and help that Christ liberate you and take you into the spiritual world. But you cannot do that unless you overcome this demiurge. Very key. That this is an advanced ancient concept coming out of Hermeticism, out of the Gnostic systems, and so on. The tradition went from the Gnostics all across the world, even in India, all the way to the Nazarenes, the Essenes, the Ebionites, and so on. You got to study the Dead Sea Scrolls, and you'll basically be able to connect the dots. But the point is that this demiurge in the Gnostic text is called the archons. So I'm going to put that. The demiurge is the chief of the archons. Now, when you go through mythology all across the world in different languages, these archons of that demiurge, the chief of them in the Greek mythology is Zeus. The Roman, his name is Jupiter. But Baal, his name is Baal Hadad, or Baal Aman, or just Baal, all across the Canaanite world, especially amongst the Phoenicians, but the Jebusites and the Amorites and so on, his name is Baal Hadad. And the archons are called the Baalim. One of the names of Zeus, let me keep this in mind so you understand, one of the names of Zeus is Zeus Bel or Bel Zeus. So that Bel, that Baal, same deity amongst the Canaanites and the Greeks, because that's where the Greeks got it from. They got it from the Phoenicians or the Canaanites. So it's the same demiurge. His name is Bel Marduk. There's that Bel again. Bel Marduk amongst the Sumerians and the Babylonians, because that's who they worship. So you have a man by the name of Nebuchadnezzar. Nebu is the son of, or is associated with Marduk. But that's who the Babylonians worship. That was their chief deity, Marduk. And we're going to get into why. But that's the same chief deity of the Greeks and the Romans. And we'll get into why. But now in India, which is important, dealing with the system that we call Hinduism, which is really Sanatana Dharma, his name is Indra. Now this demiurge is basically a false creator or a false architect of the illusion of this physical world that we in. It's real simple. So the goal of a Gnostic, or those seeking gnosis or seeking the Christ, is to basically liberate the soul out of the physical world, especially the physical body. So that's the goal. But the physical world is created, or the architect of it is the demiurge. And we'll get into the mythology of the Bible and how that developed and how all of this got confused. But I got to take it baby steps. So we're dealing with money right now, capitalism. And I'll deal with the mythology and the folklore and the spiritual history in the future. But the point is, you got to research the non-commodity library in the early non-canonical Christian texts, early Christian texts, and just study spirituality all across the world, in the ancient world. Any ancient text, just read it, and then you'll come to the same conclusion that I did. But anyway, the point is, Monea is the wife of Zeus. So money is the wife of this principle, this demiurge. It's the wife. They're related. They're two different principles. Well, what is the principle of the demiurge? Well, he represents power and dominance, basically the ego. So it's a divisive type of perspective on reality, but it represents class, power, dominance, male dominance especially, masculine dominance. And money and male dominance follow each other. Half of, or even more than half of the ancient Roman emperors and Greek emperors, they considered them to be incarnations of Zeus. And that's important because we're going to be dealing with that. But a king or emperor and so on, a lot of them were considered sons or incarnations of Zeus, or this demiurge. So dealing with his wife Monea, that is what money is. That's all we're working for from day to day in the Western world. With dealing with capitalism, is getting Monea, or serving Zeus, worshiping Zeus. And we gotta understand, we're not talking about worshiping as in blind worship or something like that. What I'm saying is, the principle in your mind is devoted to getting power, to getting dominance, to dominating other people and other beings. The principle in your mind is obsessed with gain and materialism, hedonism. So those are two different principles that are married, that have a relationship, that are within your own mind. So Monea, like I said, her name in the Greek is Hera, and her husband Zeus are part of the Capitoline triad with the goddess Athena. Now, if you research this Capitoline triad is the origins of this whole concept of capitalism. Capitalism is what? Spiritual bondage to the Capitoline triad. Because at this Capitoline triad is where, and not just the Capitoline triads, there were 7 hills or 7 major places. And one of them was the Capitoline Hill. See, the Capitoline Hill. And at each one of these hills, they had patron deities at each one of these hills that were over all of Rome, different regions in Rome. So the Capitoline triad are 3 deities that preside over the power and the rulership over that imperial dynasty, or that imperial world, especially with the Romans. Now, everything that we got here in the Western world with the Republicans, that's the Republic. Public comes from the plebeians, because you got to understand this. So to be a republic is to bring the power back to the plebeians. And the plebeians are a certain level in the Roman caste system. So I'll get into that in a minute. But the Democrats, demos means the people, or the mind, the mental. Remember, there is again the democrats. Demos can also mean ancestral spirit. It wasn't always a negative word. It became a negative word when it was translated in English into the Bible, the word demon or demo. But it really means a genetic collection, or agreed idea amongst a population of humans, a demographic. See, demographic? So that word means spirit or thought amongst a collected, unified group of people. So democracy, all of this stuff that we get here in the Western world is not Christian. It's Roman. You see? And that's, you got to understand that everything that we're dealing with, even out every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all of that is Norse and Roman. So every word pretty much that we're using comes from Latin and Greek, not Hebrew, you see. Not from the Bible, but from Latin and Greek. And both of those languages, Latin and Greek, and all languages of the West come from the Phoenician alphabet or the Phoenician people, which were Africans. So what I'm showing you is African spirituality, but I'm showing you the side of it that we have to get liberated from, which is the material world or materialism. But the Capitoline Triad are the three patron deities over the material world. That's what we're saying. So for you to raise the Christ or the Christ figure energy, which are many demigods or heroes in the Greek myths, like Perseus, Theseus, it's many of them. But the point is, Hercules, Adonis, they represent overcoming the limitations of Zeus and freeing the Titans out of the underworld. What are the Titans? The Titans are the fallen ancestors that were trapped by the demiurge. So the Titans is a myth. The demigods, myth. Heroes, myths. All of it is myth. None of it is substantially real. None of it is literal. All of it has to be interpreted and has to be broken down. You see, it has to be interpreted. It's all what? A metaphor, an allegory. So these Christ figures, later on in culture, they started to identify them with men who were born. But the point is, we're dealing with the Christ energy, which is the Logos, which is the spirit of the word or the consciousness before the material world was created. That essence. That's what we're dealing with before we fell. The fall of those stars or those photons or those atomic particles or those stars are nothing but our soul, trapped in the physical body that Zeus trapped us in. And how he keeps us here is through his wife, seeking the validation and aspiring to satisfy his wife, which is the desire for materialism, objects, cars, money, houses, clothes, jewelry, all of that is Monea. So, moving on. So that's the Capitoline Triad, those three deities. Zeus represents political power, Hera represents money, like we just said, and Athena represents education and knowledge. So we'll deal with Athena in the future, but for now we're just dealing with Zeus and Hera. And they were on the Capitoline Hill. Now what's interesting about that is, if you didn't know this, is that DC has what? A Capitol Hill, where what? The White House and where all of the monuments and memorials are. Why? Because Thomas Jefferson dedicated the monuments in D.C. and that whole landmass, that whole hill on D.C. to George Washington, who they believe to be an incarnation of Zeus. See? And if you don't believe me, look up the apotheos. The picture is a painting of Washington, the apotheos of George Washington. And they'll show you in the picture that he's nothing but Zeus. So, the point is, Capitoline Hill was established by the first president of the United States. Not the first, but I'm sorry, his picture and the whole idea of it based on the first president of the United States from Thomas Jefferson. All of these men are on our dollars and on our money. See? Monea, there she is again. See, so you're collecting deities. You're collecting presidents. And I'll deal with all of this in the future because all of this is advanced. Every word is a spell. And we just breaking the spell. But anyway, Capitoline Hill is DC. So we living in Rome again. They just reestablished the same rites and the same rituals and the same orders. So what I'm trying to tell you is Zeus, his intention is to extract the energy out of the demos, out of the ancestral spirits that are within all of these humans, and have energy to invest in their endeavors, their own mental endeavors, which they believe is the best for the Titans and for the heroes and for the humans, the plebeians. But the Christ, they are able to renounce and overcome his dominance and get realization of God or get spiritual liberation. And they're the only rare few that do it, those who awaken to the Christ within. So you got to study Greek mythology, Phoenician mythology, Hebrew, Gnostic, mystical knowledge, which is Kabbalah, Gnosticism, Mandeanism. You got to study a lot to understand where I'm going here. But Capitol Hill is what on DC. That's Capitoline Hill. That's where the Capitoline Triad is: Zeus, Hera, and Athena. So the Federal Reserve, the federal government, and the Federal Reserve notes is all dealing with the goddess. Her name is Fides or Fides. She's a form of the goddess named Fortuna, which means fortune. So if you want to get a fortune, You're worshiping the god Fidus. And she's also a form of the goddess Demeter. And we'll deal with Demeter in the future and all of this. And you got to remember, the pantheon of these deities are in every culture all across the world. So you got to get past having a weak stomach for this. And you got to have a strong mind and a strong mental and not get lost. But the point is, Fidus is another one. So we have a Federal Reserve note. That means it's an IOU note. Well, Fidus is the goddess of trust, meaning it's a promissory spirit. It's the mentality that I can trust the spirit that's in you, or the spirit that's in this city, or the spirit that's in this state. State of what? A state of consciousness. So Fidus is a currency of Monea moving through every state of consciousness to raise what? The power, the energy of Zeus. Because you gotta remember, Zeus represents energy trapped in a physical form, which is what? Electricity. So Zeus, Baal, Marduk, and Indra are all deities of what? Electricity, or thunder, lightning. So that translates to what? Currency. So there's IOU notes, the dollar bill. So that's dealing with how the demiurge, or how these principles in nature that basically fundamentally created the illusion of this physical world are keeping us bound from day to day to survive, to eat, and so on. So that's the origins of the word money. That's the Capitoline Triad and the Capitoline Hill. So moving on. So these archons all across the world, in India they're called the Devas, but the point is they live at a certain realm called Mount Olympus, or in the Hindu it's called Swarga, or Indraloka, Swarga, or Deva Loka. Deva means deity, Deva, same thing. So the point is, if you don't get past that third round, you're trapped here in this physical world, and you have to what? Reincarnate or be reborn. Through what? Not an animal or not through a plant, but through your children. And as long as you are bound to Zeus or the demiurge, you're trapped here. You haven't what? Awakened to the Christ within. Because once that happens, you don't perpetuate the physical body anymore. You're free from the physical body. You return back to the heavenly states that you fell from. So that's the first point, which is spiritual bondage. I try to break that down. That's why capitalism is evil. I had to deal with the spiritual first, because capitalism is what? Spiritual bondage to the Capitoline Triad. Moving on. Now we're gonna move to physical bondage. Okay, so physical bondage, I'm gonna still bring the spiritual into the physical, because you gotta understand, as above, so below, as within, so without. So they're parallel, but to help the connection, you have to study the Roman caste system. And the Roman caste system, in the Roman caste system at the top, you have the patricians, right? Which are like the patriarchs or the head leaders. And they basically become your congressmen, your senators, your emperors, and today we would say like presidents, right? And judges, also judges. So, and also secretaries of state. So those are your patricians. They're the higher class. They're the elite. They represent the Olympians or the archons, okay? The Olympians or the archons, or the devas. They represent they represent the solar realm, this third realm of the cycles of the sun going through the 12 constellations and so on. So they represent a certain dimensional physical plane of existence of energy. So that's the top, which is the patricians. So study the mythology. Look at what the patricians are. They're the Olympians. And they represent the council of the Olympians, because the Olympians have a council of gods, or theos. And that's the same as what the Senate is. It's a council of these patricians. These Olympians. Next you have the plebeians. The plebeians represent any of the diverse deities that have a function in the universe. But they don't have as much power as the Olympians. So that can be any of the Titans' children. The Titans have innumerable children. And you have to research and look them all up. And then you have the other 11 Olympians. They have a lot of children or descendants. So they represent the plebeians. And that's basically people who at most have land or lords, have land ownership. They're lords over their own property. They're not lords over the whole empire or the whole state, but they are lords over their own property. Those are called plebeians. Next, you have freedmen. Now, these freedmen represent the Greek heroes, because you understand Zeus has so many sons by laying with titanic or titan women, or even nymphs, these different nymphs and titanic women. When he mixes with primordial deities or titans, it gives birth to demigods. And those are what the heroes, because they're able to overcome the principle within them that's called Zeus, and take that energy of Zeus and ascend their titanic energy back into the primordial world, or heaven, the heavenly world. So those are demigods, and there's a plethora of them. So those represent the freedmen, because they're free. They got liberty. And liberty is Persephone. We'll deal with her in the future, but for now, in the Gnostic world, she's called Sophia, and she's represented by Mary Magdalene and so on. But we'll deal with her in the future. But the point is, there's a deity by the name of Libera, or liberty, and those freemen are able to get on that level, basically. Under that world, or under the next level of the caste system, under the plebeians are the slaves or the serfs. Now they represent the titans. The titans and all of the chthonic means underworld deities. So that will be shades, manes, lairs. There's many names of them, but they're basically like ghosts and titans, basically, which are like souls that are trapped in ignorance. Because in the higher in the heavens you go, or these 7 heavens you go, you look up the Gnostic heavens, you'll see there's aeons or heavens. The higher you go is the higher you go to the truth or knowledge or gnosis, which is the Christ. The Christ is the highest sphere, called the proto-gonos or the proto-logos. Proto means first or highest. Logos means world. The Hindus call it Brahmaloka or Satyaloka. Satya means truth. The lowest world is called the Patala realms, the hellish realms. That's where the titans are. So the point is, we all as humans and animals and plants are all trapped in a titanic world, mixed and mingled with the earth, the physical earth. But the titanic aspect of it is primordial. It's before creation. It's beyond matter. So the point is, that caste system, from the highest to the lowest being the slaves, are the titans. They represent a very brute and ignorant state. And what happens usually across the whole world is these caste systems, the patricians or the Brahmins or the highest caste, they become corrupt. Zeus is known, and Indra and Marduk are known to become corrupt. And they do what? They exploit and they manipulate people's opportunity to get free and climb this system, this caste system, to get to Mount Olympus, or to become a part, like in America, to become a part of what politics, or to become what? A senator, a judge, a president. And how they do this is they keep you ignorant. They send their different devas or lower archons to trick you into ignorance through hedonism, which is like alcohol, lust, greed. They find these different avenues to trick you. In the ancient world, it was through theater and through alcohol and partying. And in the modern world, it's through media, music. So Zeus would send his nymphs. These nymphs would seduce the public. So we have all of these nymphs that are in American culture. And I can list them, but they're basically like these celebrities that we all are seduced by. And they trick us back into this slave titan level in this caste system. In India, it's the same thing. Indra will do the same thing. So the point is, these corrupt Brahmins have to be humbled by this Christ knowledge, by this gnosis, and they will be humbled. But the only level of humility is them understanding that this energy has risen. You see, that this energy has what? Resurrected. It's not dead. But the point is, whether it's the patricians, Brahmins, whatever head of a caste system in America, this would be the 1% and the politicians. So the point is, the Roman caste system, just bring that to today. They used Monea and Zeus back then the same way we use money and politics, and also racial competition today. So that's the caste system brought to this modern day. We're in a caste system. Now in the 1700s, you had a whole lot of Europeans from Western Europe, like London. I mean, from Britain, France, uh, Ireland, Scotland, and so on, come here. Dutch, Danish, and so on, come here, and the masses of them were serfs or peasants of where they came from, whether it was Britain or wherever. They were on the lower totem pole. But the promise for them is when they get to America, they got a promise that they could at least become lords. But in the Roman thing, they're called plebeians, but they could become what? Lords. So they don't have to no longer be serfs or slaves of Western Europe. They can now become lords in the New World, in America. But they have to make somebody else the serf or the slave or the titan. So what they did is they went to caste systems all across West Africa and they bought those titans and they had them procreate or grow their population or demographic of slaves, of African slaves, and bring them to America. You get it? And they become the serfs or the titans, as well as all of the other diverse groups of immigrants that volunteer to serve Zeus. Check. So the point is that I'm getting at here is that caste system was also in Britain, in the Christian Protestant world, under the British crown and the French crown, all of these different crowns. It was just different names. But those Europeans were smart enough to know we don't want to spend our total existence as slaves perpetually. So let's take this opportunity to go to the New World, to go to America, and get free land. Not land we got to pay for, but free land by land grants. And all we have to do is get slaves, and we'll be in bliss in heaven, just like an Olympian, for as long as it lasts. But see, the problem that happened is 200 years later, slavery ended, and that was the worst thing that was their heaven ending. That was their paradise ending. So what I'm getting at is that caste system is still here. It never left. All the way from the Roman and the Phoenician, all the way back to the Babylonian era, it's still here. It's just, it gets juggled because a new emperor will come, or a new king, or a new monarchy will come, and we'll just trade, we'll play musical chairs. But the point is that this system of energy, these deities, this pantheon of deities, is very much still alive. And I'm telling you straight up, everything that you touch, see, taste, touch, and smell and hear is all these deities. Period. And I prove it, but you gotta study language and etymology to get to the origins of this and understand what we are in. But anyway, so that's the caste system. So when it came to America, these serfs and these lower caste Western Europeans, what they did was they did Native American genocide. So how could you ever validate capitalism and colonialism when it slaughtered multi-millions? I forget the exact number. I put it on the screen. But multi-millions of Native Americans, not just in North America, but in South America. And this was 200 years before the British and French came to the North. It was down in the South, in Central America, with the Spanish, and the Portuguese. And they basically, I don't know, I forget the exact number, but they slaughtered millions. I think it was like 200, around that number, but millions. So in North America, with the colonization of the 13 colonies, they slaughtered all of them, and then we had the Trail of Tears pushing them to Oklahoma, or to the Plainlands. So, but the point is, Native American genocide is not about racism. It's about money. Money. The land, each 13 colonies had a certain amount of money that was going to a crown, either the French crown or the British crown or other crowns. It was money, tobacco, tea, corn, crops, beans, all of that, potatoes, all of it was what? Money. So from the very inception of the evil of this country, which is genocide, racial genocide, it wasn't because of religion, because they were pagan or whatever, savage or whatever, and it wasn't because of their race, because they were brown people or red people or whatever. It was because of money. So Native American genocide was what? Evil. And it was for what? Money. We talking billions upon billions of dollars this American land is worth. And they took those 13 colonies and they went west. They conquered the West. and it was called Manifest Destiny. You know, some BS that they made up in their head, but the point is, it was all for money. Colonialism, all across the world, you got to study imperialism, international imperialism, and look at the Berlin Conference and how they chopped up Africa into pieces. They didn't do that because they racist. I mean, they might be racist, but they didn't do that because of race. They did that. They did that for what? Money. America and Africa is rich in resources, and even if Europe was rich in resources or money, resources means money. Even if Europe had a whole lot of money, it's not enough to go around for all Europeans if they overpopulate there or the demographics start to grow. So they're diverse groups which are already fighting each other, the French versus the British versus the Spanish, all of them going at each other. They need to what? Pack up and go seek out. They got to make a voyage and look for more money because everybody's got to eat. Everybody needs land. So they leave and they move out, just like what? A virus. But Europeans are not the only ones who did this. But the point is, we're talking about how America got established. But Europeans, they're not the only ones. It's all humans. So let's get that out the way. We're not validating one group of humans versus the other. We're disvalidating archons and principalities, ideas in the human mind. We're disqualifying humans. So let's keep moving. So Native American genocide, colonialism, like I said, study the Berlin Conference and how the whole world was colonialized. Study South Africa, the apartheid. There you go. Next, slavery. You know, this is a big one because obviously I'm African American and my people were what? Enslaved. And it has generationally affected us to this very day. I'm from Baltimore, from the inner city. Is where I was born. And everywhere you go in the black community, you see how it clearly has affected us. So it's plain to see that it's evidently what? Evil. So slavery, the misconception and the construct we were given is that slavery was based on race. That's how black people feel about it emotionally. That's how they psychologically interpret it. But the point is, black people, you're wrong. Slavery was not about skin color. Slavery was about money. Money. So if you try to validate your skin color to Europeans, you're wasting your time. Because you're validating your skin color so you can get in with them, so you can get money. Because you desire the same thing they desire. These principles, right? These archons, the demiurge, right? You desire the same desires. So what you do is you made up in your mind that, oh, they hate my skin color. And if I can help them get over that by doing good and being a good citizen, then they'll forget my skin color and then life can be happy and jolly. No, it never was about your skin color. They would have enslaved the Norsemen, or the Norsemen would have enslaved them. And the Norsemen are way much more paler than the Anglo-Saxons from Western Europe or Southern Europe. So what I'm trying to say is the Europeans would have enslaved each other if there was no dark-skinned person on the planet. They were already going at it, enslaving each other. Look up the Norse slave trade against the Celtics and the Slavs. Look up the campaigns and fights between Normandy and France, or Normandy or the Norse versus the British. I mean, just look up European history and you'll see what I'm saying. They were fighting, killing, enslaving, and trading each other before they even breached Europe and went to another continent. So the point is, slavery, African American, the transatlantic slave trade, Africans being enslaved and trafficked to the West, was not about skin color. You heard it here first, or maybe second or third, but you heard it here. It was about money. So slavery, what is evil, obviously, but it was about capitalism. Each slave had a capital on him. He was free labor. Free labor means millions of dollars. It means cha-ching. That's what it means. So we see that slavery has been abolished, and we said, okay, that's evil. Let's get that out of here. But we still keep this, which is the same thing, capitalism. We got rid of the people who suffer because of the principle, but we didn't get rid of the principle. You see? So anyway, now we gonna move to the next point, which is racism. Racism is not racism. Racism is based on nepotism. Yeah, okay. Racism is based off of nepotism, meaning families competing over each other for resources. That's all it is. So what happens is on a smaller scale, it can be something as small as y'all wear blue and we wear green. But on a massive scale, it could be, okay, y'all got blonde hair and we got red hair. Or y'all got dark skin and we got yellow skin. You see? Or y'all got this type of eyes and we got this type of eyes. So on a large scale, it becomes racism because of genetic diversity. But on a small scale, it's just these small differences because it's just nepotism. Nepotism means competition over money based on the family, keeping the money or the power in the family. To hell with the world, just me and my family. It's basically narcissism on a family level. So that's what racism is. It's a competition over money. If people didn't need land, food, clothing, shelter, and sex, there would be no racism. We would be as jolly as birds. We would be pretty much in what we call bliss or peace. There would be world peace if there was no fight over resources. There you go. So, what I dealt with this, the Native American genocide, colonialism, slavery, is the origin of Western wealth. All of the foundation of the money that's being circulated right now, the currency being circulated right now, was built on, obviously, the genocide and the defeat of the Native American people. Period. And we know that there's 13 original colonies and so many states, different regions, different states or cities, provinces, where that land that you own was originally the Cherokee, or originally the Shawnee, or the Lakota, or the Apache, or so on. You see the Muskegee, or the Creek. So it's each land that you own. Georgia is the Muskegee land. You get it? That's where I'm at. Georgia. It's Muskegee. It's Creek land. They have 3 major holy sites in the state. This was their river system. Now they're somewhere in Oklahoma. So the point I'm trying to make is, what is Georgia? Money. What is New York? Money. What is Massachusetts? Money. See? What is Pennsylvania? Money. So the slaughter of masses of sentient beings, human beings, that is the origin of Western wealth. And before that, the Britishmen and the French who came here, they defeated countries before they even came here. They slaughtered millions before they even came here. Then they came here and slaughtered millions. So the origin of Western wealth is built on brutality and competition. So I know we got to deal with labor. I'm going to deal with that in a minute because I know you're going to say, well, ain't money based on labor? Well, we'll deal with that in a minute. But the point is, we're moving on, is with wealth inequality, which is what I'm going to deal with next. Wealth inequality, you have to understand that 1% to 2% owns 80% of Western wealth. And on the planet, I believe it's like the same number, like 4% owns all of the world's wealth. So the point is, what you have to understand is, with capitalism, there's only one winner. That's what capital means. It means we all start at the same place as families. We all start at the same place, and we're going to see how this game goes. It's like, imagine playing Monopoly with people's lives. Everybody in your family sit down, y'all play Monopoly, and at the end of the game, all 20 of your family members that sit down, you're the only one that gets up from the table. They all die. What the hell type of sadistic, twisted game is that? So that's what we are validating when we validate capitalism. It starts, the race starts somewhere and it ends somewhere. There's only going to be one winner. You see? Well, dealing with wealth inequality in America, what you have to understand is that one country can exploit a whole massive continent or a whole nother region of continents. So the point I'm trying to make is you have to deal with wealth inequality worldwide and deal with third world exploitation. So pretty much half the stuff we all got in our house comes from some exploited group of people across the world. And half the food comes from some exploited group. And like I said, every piece of food that you eat in America obviously would have to come from original Native American lands. So that's oppression of them every time you eat. So moving on, with wealth inequality and racism, you're dealing with what? Elitism. That's where you get elitism from. And classism. So these are all what? Evil. We all know they're evil. Well, they all equal capitalism. Capitalism and all this is the exact same thing. You see what I'm saying? It's a synonym. They're all synonyms. So dealing with work, I got to deal with the deception. So my third point was competition. We dealt with that. My fourth point is deception. So let's deal with where we are now while you're watching this video. This is the reason why you're watching. Deception is that basically labor is wage slaves or wage slave labor, right? And we're dealing with that if you deal with the feudal system, like I said earlier, with Western Europe, you understand that every lord today is a CEO or a president over a corporation. That's the lord. The property that he owns is the same thing as what the lord owned, the estate or the property that the lord would own, the manor or the estate that the lord would own in the medieval and Renaissance period in Europe. So the lord is over what? A real estate, right? Over a piece of property. He's lord over it. And he hires knights to watch it. The knights are the police officers. Same thing. Or and security guards. Those are your knights. They get paid a little bit more than the average public servant. And also the army. So the army, the security, and the police, that's your knights. But the lord today is the CEOs. It's real simple. So the CEOs have monopolized all of the businesses, the private businesses, and they become a monopoly powerhouses. You see, where they dominate everything, like Walmart, Target, etc., etc. So the point is, at the start of this race or this competition, it all seems like everybody's doing all right and pretty equal, except for the Native Americans and the Africans that are enslaved and slaughtered. You know what I'm saying? We forgot about that. But it starts out equal with Europeans. They all start out equal with land grants. So they all get about, let's say, I'll say like 80 acres of land or 50 acres of land. So they good to go. Like, okay, we can handle this land, give us some slaves to work it for free, and hopefully we can win this race. Britain, France, Spain, one of us, we're going to win. Eventually the Americans that came from Britain, they decided to cut Britain off. We know that with them fighting for independence. But still, it was a race. And it starts on the family level. And then town, city, state, so on. So with that race, the point I'm getting at is that it's how it started. Then we get to the point where it starts to get unequal as we go on. So it started out equal, but then it starts to get less and less and less equal from one generation to the next. One generation to the next. So in a democracy, they say everybody's free, everybody's equal. But that contradicts capitalism. Democracy and capitalism is what a contradiction. Because how can we all be free when your family inherits millions, even billions? But my family has always been at a deficit or falling behind, meaning we're not both born equally. So the only way that democracy can ever be truly equal is you have to remove capitalism. It's real simple. So we're dealing with wage slavery, or wage slave labor. I was saying that basically the people who are running the corporations today, these CEOs and the lords over all that is in America, these businesses, they started out just like every other slave owner and landowner, plantation owner, with just their little innovations and ideas and inventions and concepts they had of growth. And now we at where we at now, where basically a small percentage of those Europeans have now become the 1% or even the 10% that owns all of America. And now we all are trapped at the fruit of this game. The fruit of the game, the end of the game means the masses are enslaved by the elite. That's the end of the game. You get it? So that's what wage slavery is. You perpetually are working and not able to get any higher, go anywhere. You're trapped as a slave? You're called a public servant. You're an indentured servant. You're a hired servant. You get hired. You don't hire, you get hired. And what you have to understand is before the 1600s and before, let's say, the 1100s AD, the biggest bulk of the world did not work for somebody else. They would work for their own family. Because why? That family, your father would have acres of land. You were free. So how is it now that 90% of the population is convinced, right? Convinced because of media. Deception is convinced that their life's duty to God is to work for somebody else. That's my duty. I'm a good citizen if I be productive and work for you. So that whole concept is programming and social engineering over these last 400 years that this program has been running. So the point I'm trying to make is that wage slavery is not the same as freedom. You're equal if you're a public servant or an employee for any company or any corporation. If you're an employee, you are a serf under the feudal system. You get it? You are a serf. Your boss is a peasant, and the CEO is the lord. Check. So the masses now of Americans are now serfs or slaves. That's the point. Especially, I gotta make this point clear, especially black people now. And we're just starting to wake up and realize what's really going on here, which is that capitalism is evil. So if you haven't woke up before this, well, wake up now. So, in dealing with the types of labor that's available now, most of it, originally it was the industrial age, but now we under deindustrialization, meaning there is no more factories or companies or laborious work that's basically assembly line work. That work is gone. It's been gone since like the 1970s. So what am I saying? I'm saying every major city, Detroit, New York, Philly, New Jersey, Baltimore, Atlanta, LA, Texas, all of them cities over there in Texas like Houston, all of these different major hubs where urban people are, like black people and so on, there used to be in the 1920s to 1910s to 1970s, there used to be factories all the men would work at. But those factories are gone because of deindustrialization. So what does that mean? That means that we now have to work for these basic industries, which is basically health, which is basically what most of our women are into. They into nursing and health. Food is what damn near probably half the population works in, food. And education, so that means teachers, so on and so forth. So you work in those three different types of fields. And my point is all three of them are a scam. Health is based on exploiting the vulnerability of people who could heal themselves. You get it? So we know that the pharmaceutical industry is a scam. We know that basically the health industry is a scam, basically. So overall, the food industry is a scam. How do you know? Because they take no concern of your health. It's real simple. So the food industry is a hustle. It's a hustle, meaning they playing us with advertisement. They're making us sick. They're killing us. They're putting GMO on our food. So food, which is capitalism, health, capitalism, and education, they miseducating us. Very key. They're making you rote learn, meaning only go to work, only go to school to be educated on how to be a slave. There it is again. So all three are a scam. And everybody's figuring this out now, that the college tuition loans and all of these college loans, and the food industry, everybody's becoming vegans. Even McDonald's, I think, got vegan food now. And everybody's learning about the health industry with like Dr. Sebi and all of these alternative healers. Everybody's figuring out that these three things that's built the foundation of this whole society is a lie. And what is the lie? It's capitalism. If a man's intention and sure motivation in life is to get money, why the heck would he help you with your food, your health, or your education? He's going to do the minimum work he needs to do and get the maximum outcome of a maximum income for himself. Obviously, if you don't know this, then you're naive. You don't know human nature. And you don't know the nature of these archons or these spirits or these deities. So the third deception is the media. Why is it that we don't know this? Because it's the media. I heard for years since I was a child that the media dumbs you down. You can't watch too much TV. And I never really believed it until I matured and I became an adult. And I realized after reading so many books and so much information and traveling and exposing my mind to things that yes, the media is dumbing us down and it's making us socialize based on social engineering. So human beings are social creatures, so that they look for acceptance and to be involved and to participate with the group. So that's why we watch TV. That's why we plug into the news and plug into sitcoms and reality TV, because we want to be plugged into what's going on and to stimulate our hormones and be engaged so we can feel loved and accepted in all of this. But the point is, then they have the power to social engineer you and keep you from all of this knowledge. Or keep you from what? Gnosis. So my point is, my 5 points to bring this all to a conclusion is: first is with spiritual bondage, which we dealt with. Second is physical bondage, which we dealt with. Third is competition. We dealt with that. Fourth is deception. We just dealt with that right now. And fifth is the solution, or basically what is the conclusion. And for those who have family and children, who pretty much are in bondage, who are trapped to this cycle of being a wage slave or being an indentured servant, a public servant, or whatever, an employee, because you have a family or because you have to feed yourself even, I'll give you a solution in the future. Just, subscribe, follow my channel, and I'll be dropping what's your angle and how you can get free. But for all those people who are not in that, which most people are under that category, but for those who are not, the very few who are not, well, the solution for you have to understand gnosis, or the spiritual information, the spiritual knowledge. What in the myth of the Greeks and the Romans and the Phoenicians and Etruscans and all of these Southern European people who developed that spiritual system there, Zeus or Jupiter is the deity who tries to stop the heroes or the Christ energy from liberating the plebeians and the titans and the people. So the point I'm trying to make is, in that mythology, if you go to India, amongst the ancient Hindus, the Tamil and Dravidians, which are Africans, or Ethiopians, better yet, when you study their mythology in the Puranas and the Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll see that Indra has to get humbled by Krishna. It's called the myth of the Gandharian hill. It's basically the myth of Krishna lifting the great mountain. Now that myth, Indra has to be humbled. And what does that represent? It represents masculine domination and power, and feminine domination and power, which is money and dominance, brute force and dominance. Those two principles inside of your psychology and in nature will eventually be humbled or be defeated and have to submit to the Christ or the Krishna energy, or Christ within you, which represents the knowledge that the gnosis, the Jnana or Jnana, that you know that God is within inside of your temple. Not in Capitalism Hill, not externally to any deception that they may take you, but that the truth is that before you were formed in this physical body, before all of your ancestors were born, before they procreated, you were originally immortal and in the spiritual world. And that spark or that logos of that Christ energy or Christ or that soul is within you. That God, the supreme, absolute, highest God, is within you. That's even above Zeus and Monea. And that concept and that knowledge becomes bhakti or devotion, or the path of sadhana, or even yoga, which means to yoke yourself to your soul. But it also becomes the path of Christ, or the path of the Gnostic path, or the path of Christ. So the point I'm making is that you have to realize this Christ within and get a realization of that gnosis, or that spiritual knowledge. And once you do that, in the mythology, what that symbolizes is once you do that and you have a true experience or realization of this, you defeat and overcome and humble Indra, or the demiurge, or Zeus. You humble Zeus. So, and you have to understand, as within, so without. That demiurge may be out there as some president or emperor or king or whatever, or even some type of CEO or power. Yes, Zeus may be out there, but Zeus is also within, as within, so without. The 7 Hermetic principles. So the point I'm trying to make is that, where is Zeus within you? Zeus is your own ego, your own narcissism, or your own dominance and willpower dealing with materialism and power, which is the solar realm, or the third realm. So you have to awaken the Krishna or the Christ within you, your soul, to destroy and humble your own ego, which means you have to let go and renounce Monea and Zeus, her husband, and seek only the Christ within. Only seek the God within. So that's the point and the summary of this whole thing. That's what I'm trying to get people to focus on. And with that, that's called renunciation of the world. When you say this, you're saying the world. When you overcome the demiurge, you overcome the construct of this physical world. So that's your own ego, like I said. Your brain is what tells you this material world is there. Your brain is what seduces you to it. You have to conquer your own ego. Check. And we know that with this pronunciation, we know that the Christ that they have in the New Testament, or Yeshua or Jesus as the people in the West know him, or the Christians know him, that he says without a doubt that you have to choose. Either you're going to serve Mammon or God. You see, you cannot serve both. You can either serve the one or the other, right? It's very clear. And he also told the young man, that it's very difficult or impossible for the rich to enter to the kingdom of heaven. It's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven. Because what are we talking about here? Christ is God within, which is your own soul has to get into what the seventh realm, the Gnostic seven heavens, into the seventh heaven, which is what you have to do in your own inner world. And that will express itself in the external world. And you can't do that if you can't get past the third and fourth world, which is the realm of Zeus, the Olympians, Mount Olympus. You see, the seven heavens, or the Gnostic heavens, even study the Book of Enoch and many texts, it breaks down these heavens. Which, like the Christ says, the kingdom of heaven is what? Within. Check. The kingdom of heaven is within. The kingdom of the world is what? External, which is Zeus's world. And that realization of this Christ within is knowing that God is what within you. That's what the Christ represents. God is within you. Do you not know that ye are gods? That's what the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, that God is what within you. And understanding that God is within all beings and everybody in this material world. That same soul is within all beings. That's the Christ. That's understanding that God is within and within all beings. So with that knowledge, that gnosis, you're able to liberate yourself. You're able to overcome all of the principles and energies that will keep you from getting into the heavenly planes or get salvation. So, like it says, it's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into the kingdom of heaven. And you can't serve both. You're either going to serve Mammon or God. Check. So with that, I'm going to read a few scriptures out of the Nag Hammadi Library Gnostic text and bring it to a wrap. But those are the 5 points. I try to tackle each one. But the solution, like I said, was to what? Renounce the world. Renounce Monet. If you want to know exactly how to do that, well, subscribe. You can just ask me directly with specific questions, but I'll be breaking it down. And for those who have a family who don't want to be irresponsible and put off their responsibilities by taking care of their family and their children, well, I'll tell you what to do too. Okay, so this is out of the Nag Hammadi Library, the teachings of Sylvanus. Do not become desirous of gold and silver, which are profitless. This is out of the Testimony of Truth. It says, the seed of Adam, they have not ceased from desire which is wicked, pulled every which way, gratified by the unrighteous mammon. Remember, mammon is nothing but money. They lend money at interest, they waste time. The father of mammon is also the father of sexual intercourse, but he who is able to renounce them both shows that he has power to accuse them. Accuse who? The archons or the devas or so on. You rise what? Above them. Because the only being that has the power to accuse these principles, these deities, is the Christ energy or the Christ, which is the realization that God is within you and within all beings. And this is the Gospel of Thomas. It says, let one who has found the world and has become wealthy renounce the world. Check. So let one who has found the world and has become wealthy renounce it. Yeah, so with that, hopefully you can realize that capitalism is evil by this information, these 5 points. And with that, like I said, the solution is to what? Renounce your attachment, your desire to what? Materialism, capitalism, and money. Check. So that's the solution. Renounce it.